So I usually start these kinds of talks by introducing you to my wife. My wife is Anna, a beautiful, beautiful lady. When I was on my way over here tonight, before I left, she said two things to me, which will, those of you who are married, this isn't much of a surprise. She said, people actually want to hear you talk about something. I said, yes, shockingly. And then she said, why are you wearing that? You look like a 22-year-old college Republican. So my wife, very loving and a phenomenal woman. And then my daughter, who is Sophia, who's 3. Very, very cute, beautiful girl. But she's half German and half Latina. So can you forward to the next slide? I want to just give you a little clue into my cultural background. It's part of the reason I had some success at Urban Ed. Hans, if you can't read it from the back, as he's plummeting to his death with his arms crossed, is still convinced that the bargain brand mountain climbing equipment was the way to go. So my daughter is German and Latina mix. So she's 3 years old and is incredibly stubborn and has Latin feistiness. So it's like she's really petite and is larger than life every day. She has a lot of in-house suspensions in her future. So I also get asked to talk about the education scene in Milwaukee quite frequently. And what I'm going to do is just spend a really short period of time talking about the education scene in Milwaukee, mention schools that can and what we do, and then talk about Unity of Motion and the power of the partnerships with our schools. So when I thought about how to illustrate for you the education scene in Milwaukee, I thought of some images that I've come across that really define what education is in Milwaukee at the moment, the crisis we're in. So there are all these schools that have the word school on them in the district and charter and choice, and there's very, very little education actually going on inside those schools, sadly. Also, we make promises to kids about what school will do for them, and then it proves to be a lie. So, not exactly the death of Santa Claus, but learn to fly here. You see, high expectations start here, and yet, and this is what's really infuriating to me, is when you read, and I challenge you, when you read an article about educational failure in Milwaukee, you read about, somewhere in that article, they'll say something like this: if it weren't for the societal issues, poverty, socioeconomic status, if the parents were more committed, we could be successful. And I want to challenge you, when you read articles about educational failure, you will find something like that in there. And it really infuriates me. It's very personal to me, because essentially what that is a polite translation of is a statement: if you give us different kids and different parents and different families, we'll be successful. That's what that means. That's code. And so I'm here to tell you, we cannot accept that as an excuse. There are lots of successful schools across the country. We have a small number right now in Milwaukee, and what we need to do is challenge our school people in Milwaukee to create more of them. So let's continue on. I don't have my clicker, you guys. So this one represents to me everybody saying it's about the kids, it's about the kids, it's about the kids, and then every single decision is protecting the status quo, which is about the adults. And then finally, the politicians posing for pictures while the place goes to hell in a handbasket. So, on a serious note, Milwaukee has the largest racial achievement gap in the entire country. If you didn't know that, we have a serious, serious crisis on our hands. Illustrate this for you. If you start with 100 black males, now this is a district statistic, but if you start with 100 black males in kindergarten, I'll pick on the choice and charter schools in a second, you end up with 33 kids who graduate black males that graduate from high school, and only 2 that graduate college ready. In other words, they don't need any remedial courses when they enter college. So you start with 133 graduate high school, 2 college ready. Now, for those of you in here who work with the kids, those of us in here who work with the kids who are in the community and interact with the students we have, we know that they're brilliant. We know that it's not the fault of the kids. We've got to fix it. So, Howard Fuller said, somebody asked him, how come you seem angry all the time? And he said, if you're a black male and you're semi-conscious in Milwaukee, you should walk around in a fit of rage. And I want to adjust that a little bit and just say, if you're halfway conscious of any race and you're in Milwaukee, you should walk around full of rage. So this is the story. We have another crisis in Milwaukee, and that is the crisis of not focusing on quality. So we've focused a lot on options, haven't focused on quality. Major problem, and we need to start doing that. The reason that I'm here tonight is, one of my nicknames when I was younger as a school leader, people called me the Simon Cowell of education, of urban education, because I just didn't have a lot of patience for people that weren't really, really serious about transforming kids' lives. And so I live in the community, I work in the community a lot, and I can tell you that there are a lot of people out there running nonprofits, and they might be good people at heart, but their approach is to feel sorry for the kids, to pat them on the head, very patronizing, very condescending kind of love to the students and the parents, to say, woe is you, woe is your life, you know, I'm here to hold your hand and cry with you. No actual effort to transform the kids' lives, and that's offensive. And I'm here to tell you the reason that I'm standing here talking at this event is because I love what Unity in Motion is about and the fact that they focus on quality. There's a reason that they partner with the highest performing schools in the city, because they care about quality. And that's what we at Schools That Can care about. So just a really quick plug for Schools That Can, and then I'm going to talk more about Unity in Motion. We were started 1.5 years ago. Abby Ramirez, my co-founder, is here. We basically, our vision is to get to 20,000 students by 2020. And we are just working like crazy to rally around the highest performing schools, help them expand and replicate, work with existing schools that have high potential and help them move, and then thirdly, recruiting high performers to the city to create more high performing schools and get to 20,000 by 2020. Happy to talk more about that sometime when we have an opportunity. So I want to talk a little bit about a quick history of urban ed reform. And the reason that I want to tell you about this is because it does inform basically some of the beliefs of Unity in Motion, some of the ways that Al and his people operate. Because you have to realize in the last 20 years it's been a radical transformation in ed reform, and it's informed a lot of the work we do, a lot of the work that Unity in Motion does. So very quickly, this teacher, Jaime Escalante, late 80s, early 90s when I was going to college, the movie Stand and Deliver. Isolated teacher in a school, in a failing school, transforming the lives of kids, closing the achievement gap. Rafe Esquith, another teacher. Harriet Ball, another teacher. Individuals, isolated, closing the achievement gap. Then, I'm going to do this really fast. Wendy Kopp, 1991, she founds Teach for America. That was 20 years ago. Out of Teach for America comes KIPP. 1996, KIPP opens his first school in Houston, Texas. By 2001, and this is where it gets really personal for me, KIPP has 2 schools across the country. One of them, KIPP Bronx, that we at St. Marcus in 2001, we repeatedly took our teachers there. We did the same thing with the Hope staff to learn from KIPP Bronx. Learn their techniques, come back, and basically try to create the same kind of model in Milwaukee. Here's the exciting part. Can you go back one? KIPP has 108 schools now, 10 years later. And then, if you go to the next slide, literally there are hundreds and hundreds of schools now closing the achievement gap. So we went from isolated teacher doing it to a small cluster of schools here and there to hundreds of schools across the country that are closing the achievement gap. And it's why when you hear people talk about we can't do it because of the kids and the families, and it's excuse after excuse, and we know how to get it done. We know how to get it done. So the question is, do we have the will to do it? And my challenge to you tonight is to constantly ask that question of yourself and ask that question of educators in the city, be they from any sector. If we know how to do it, how come we're not getting it done? And it mostly has to do with looking out for adult interest and not kid interest. So one of the things that I'll tell you about is that all these organizations partner with community organizations of quality. So I'm not going to go through it. If we had more time, I'd tell you each one, because I've been to all these places, who they partner with and why. Quality schools partner with quality programs. And so it's not about just doing a great program in a school, it's finding those quality partners. And that's what we've seen with Unity in Motion. So we have, in Unity in Motion, they're partnering with St. Marcus, they're partnering with Milwaukee College Prep, Hope Prima, they're partnering with some of the best schools in the city. And what I can tell you, this is just personal testimony about Unity in Motion of a young man that I just happen to know, because I live on 2nd Street. Henry lives a couple blocks away, Henry Tyson. Henry Tyson took the challenge of the black male crisis in Milwaukee and said, I'm going to do something about it. And so those of you who know Henry, you know he's got kids living with him that are kids coming from the most difficult home situations. And so one of those young men is Keon. And Keon got involved with Unity in Motion about the same time that he came to St. Marcus. Well, what I can tell you about the impact, because Keon is at our house quite a bit, plays with my daughter, has dinner with us, with Henry, so I see him here and there. The impact that Unity in Motion has had has been tremendous on Keon's life. First of all, what Al and his people do in terms of instilling discipline, teaching leadership, creating ownership, kinds of responsibilities inside of young people, it's truly incredible. And both Henry and I have seen that in Keon, the impact. He meets John Bly, who's here tonight. John Bly, he's at his house in the summer, definitely changing Keon's life. He gets introduced to somebody via Unity in Motion. He gets a caddy at Milwaukee Country Club to earn money in the summer to help pay for school. He gets a scholarship through Unity in Motion to help pay for a boarding school at Luther Prep. The guy's life is absolutely transformed because of his connection with Unity in Motion. So it's just an absolutely incredible program. I have a couple more things to say just as a plea to you to get involved. Recently we were at a TFA summit and there was a panel of speakers, and Joel Klein was one of the panelists, and he said something that I think about all the time, which is, he said, you know, we sit around, we talk about collaboration, we talk about incremental change. He said, to hell with incremental change, to hell with talking about collaborating. The kids are getting screwed, and we need to take action. And so my plea to you is, as you leave tonight, not just to think, well, you know, that was interesting, that's a problem that somebody else is going to take care of. It is a life and death issue for our kids. And so what you saw here tonight with the 3 kids, those are lives that are being saved, actually, and transformed. And when I say life and death, you know, a kid doesn't make it in a suburban environment in school. They have some other options. When our kids don't make it, and programs like Unity in Motion help the kids make it through and help the kids as they go off to college, our kids don't make it, death is literally an option for them at that moment. So this is our Egypt moment, Joel Klein said. It's time for us to take action and take it to the streets. So Jeff made mention of this. I get asked another question quite frequently, which is, well, what's scalable? You know, how can we scale this for the entire city? And I'll tell you something about that question. Being in an urban school and being in a number of high-performing urban schools, there's a constant, and that is that the people in those schools are emotionally invested and have an absolute personal commitment to the kids, to seeing the kids succeed. And that, without that, nothing is scalable. So people want a magic bullet, they want a structural solution. The solution for our kids is person to person, school by school, and Unity in Motion is doing that. So when you go around this room and you see, you know, John Bly and Al and Jeff and these people that are really investing their lives, we need more people to change the city. I have one of my mentors here tonight who I'm so blessed to have him here, Bill Hughes from Greendale. I worked at Greendale a long time ago, and he taught me so much about working with people, loving people in difficult moments. And that's how the world changes, is you mentor somebody and then they go on and do great things. So my plea is to get invested. Along those lines, one more please, sorry. Get in and get your hands dirty. So I love the picture from 9/11 of the firemen going up the stairs. You know, those are inspiring pictures and things that really they almost make you weep, because you're seeing people flee down because there's fire above and they know the building might collapse, and you see the firemen heroically going up. And this is a moment for us to do that in our city, because what people tend to do in our culture right now is to withdraw and to try to get away from the hurt and get away from mess and get away from things that are uncomfortable. And my plea to you is to go toward the hurt and go toward things that are uncomfortable, go toward the mess. Like George Costanza, one of my heroes, who, when he was doing the opposite, walked up to the girl and said, "Hi, I'm George, I'm unemployed and I live with my parents." My plea to you is to do the same thing. That's what Al and Jeff are doing. Do you think that they had a clear picture of what this was going to be when they started? Absolutely not, but they stepped forward and they took action. And like those firemen on 9/11, they were going up toward the hurt. And my plea is that you figure out what that is for you and you go toward it. And with Unity in Motion, you've got a program here where they get their hands dirty. So a lot of the urban programs I was talking about before that are soft and patronizing and don't accomplish much, they tend not to get their hands dirty. Al, Jeff, picking kids up, going into homes, driving them, doing the hard work. My encouragement to you is to figure out what that is for you and get involved, because kids' lives are absolutely at stake. So, changing the dialogue, let's talk about our kids, because there are kids in Milwaukee. This is one of the rules we had in our schools, was never to say these kids or these parents or those parents. And I challenge you to do the same as you talk about this in your homes and in your communities. Lastly, Al's a different bird. He breaks all the rules and I love it. So support Al. I love Unity in Motion. This is our Egypt moment, so let's get it done, you guys.